Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Jason Wright Show. I want to talk to you today about one of the most amazing discoveries with regard to muscle development, resistance training that I have discovered in the last, I would say I've been doing this BFR, blood flow restriction training, for about a year. Now, first of all, let me tell you something. This is nothing new. Okay, it's not like if you just all of a sudden have started seeing BFR, like if you do YouTube searches or you get things coming up on your Instagram or TikTok or whatever of people actually using BFR as a training methodology. It's not something new. It's not some flash in the pan thing. It's been around forever. And as a matter of fact, Loenneke Norton, who is one of the leading experts on weight training and just health and wellness. He's a researcher. He's actually a PhD and one of my trusted go-to experts on training and physical development. He has been talking about BFR training for years and years. And I got introduced to it, I think, from Ben Greenfield, who first started talking about it. And so I decided I would try it. And here is the reason why. So I'm getting older, okay? I turn 50 next year. And so one of the things that I have tried to do is to figure out ways to get as much miles out of these tires as I possibly can. And obviously the metaphor there is these muscles and this body, you know, those are my tires. And they've only got so much tread on them and I want to get it to last as long as possible. And so I don't do a lot of soul crushing workouts like I once did. Now, if you've listened to the show for any period of time, you know I went through this phase where I was all cardio all the time and really didn't do any resistance training. Then all of a sudden, whenever I started really taking longevity, health span, and just overall health in general and taking care of myself more seriously and started diving deep into research, started hanging out and learning from people like my business partner, Dr. Gus Vickery, and Matt Camberline out at University of Washington, and studying the work of Peter Attia and having people like Jess Trankina, the founder of Generator Athlete Lab in Austin, on the show. All these, Joel Green, author of the Immunity Code. I started getting to talk to all these incredibly big brains about health and wellness. And one of the things that I learned was you've got to do resistance training. As a matter of fact, Dr. Michael Eads, who's been on the show a couple of times, author of Protein Power, New York Times bestseller multiple times, I posed the question to him way back. Okay, if I'm going to focus on, as I get older especially, if I'm going to focus on strength or cardiovascular work, how should I prioritize that? And he said, by far strength. Now, that does not mean you neglect your VO2 max and your cardiovascular, but the older we get, the more strength we need. So what I want to do is figure out ways to create strength without creating a lot of excess wear and tear on my body. And I think that's probably what I was listening to Ben Greenfield talk about one time when I first heard of BFR training, blood flow restriction training. So I went and I got these things off Amazon, these little straps, because I'm cheap. I didn't want to spend the money on a Katsu system, which, by the way, Katsu is the very first, probably, I guess they were the first ones to make these cuffs for this sort of training, and basically the way to think of them is think of a cuff like whenever you get your blood pressure taken. That's kind of what they're like. But the Katsu system, it's like 10 grand. And so I certainly wasn't going to do that. Of course, Greenfield had it, but they probably sent it to him because, you know, he's unbelievably famous and has a huge following. So people will send him products all the time. Well, poor guy like me, I'm not going to go out there and spend 10 grand. So I thought just to see if I was even going to enjoy this sort of training at all, I would go the cheapest route. And so what I did is I went to Amazon and I got these little straps, and you can go to Amazon. And I'll actually I'll link to some of the products on Amazon that I've tried in the past for this sort of training. And they were okay. They were basically like little stretchy tourniquets. They had a clasp like you would find on any sort of tie down strap where you pull it to tighten on your arms and your legs. And they were okay. But let me tell you why they are effective if you get the right kind. And by the way, that's a really poor man's way to go about it. And I do think that there is benefit there. Loenneke Norton actually uses, he might use the Katsu at this point. He could certainly afford it if he wanted to. But I know in past videos and interviews, I've heard him talk about BFR. He was using knee wraps. That's what he first started using. He may still be using that. And so here is something that is crazy about using blood flow restriction, okay? Get this. This is what the research has shown. And by the way, there's a professor, Jim, I think his name's Jeremy Paul Loenneke. If I'm pronouncing Dr. Loenneke's name wrong, forgive me. I'm going to actually reach out to him and try to get him on the show to talk more in depth about this. This is how serious I am on BFR training. He found in his research that you could actually lift as little as 20% of your one max rep. So just in terms that everyone can understand, think of the absolute most weight you could bench press. Okay, let's say that your bench is 300 pounds. Well, you could lift only 20% of that weight with the BFR bands and get the same effect. That's pretty darn remarkable. Now, you're going to do more reps than obviously that one rep max, of course, but you can actually get to failure a little quicker because the blood pools and you actually, it shifts your body into essentially simulating a much heavier load. Now, the cool thing about it is the load is not that heavy. So it's not as taxing on your muscular system. Pretty cool. Now, a question that gets asked about BFR is, well, is it better than just regular weight training? No, it's not. It's not better than going in and, doing a whatever, let's do a pyramid stack, right? Where you start lower and you work your way up to a heavy, 1 to 3 rep heavy lift and then work your way back down, whatever you do. It's not any better, but here's the thing. It is as good. You can get the same effects by using BFR training as if you were doing higher reps with heavier weights or doing like a 3 sets of 5 with really heavy weights. What I've started doing and what I really like to do with the BFR bands is I'll do increased reps by also doing increased sets. And I'll try to kind of get that sweet spot of, I don't do really light weights. Like I'm not going to go 20% of my 1 rep max, but I'm going to get probably like 40% of my 1 rep max with the BFR bands. Or if I'm doing a guided workout by like Andy Spear, I take his classes. I used to do workouts with Ben Greenfield through the Ladder app. If they're doing something that is just dumbbells, and because the highest dumbbells I have are 50 pounds, so I don't have any heavy dumbbells. So what I'll do to try to compensate for the fact that they're not that heavy, and I don't want to load up my regular barbell and do bench, then I will put on the BFR bands and do that. And here's what happens. You get an amazing pump. Your arms are so vascular when you're through. But here's the thing you gotta understand. It hurts. It is painful. Okay. And one of the things that I wasn't sure about for the longest was how tight do you actually get the bands? The best way to kind of gauge it is, and this is according to Lane Norton, who again, I trust and respect, is about a 7 out of a 10. Okay. So if 10 is just, it's really tight and you feel like your arms are going to sleep, ratchet down to kind of a 7, which you just got to figure that out. That's what I've done. I've kind of played with it. And if you will do this, there is an ache. You feel like you've been lifting a lot heavier weights. I mean, whenever you take the straps or the cuffs off, whichever you're using, I mean, it literally feels like your arms are kind of floating. It's really quite amazing. Here's where I thought this could be incredibly beneficial, and I'm really surprised that not more people are talking about this. So a real life example, my mom had a stroke a number of years ago, and so she was already getting up in years. I say up, I mean, she's pretty young when she had her stroke. She was in her 60s, but she didn't do a lot of exercise. I know she wasn't doing any resistance training, so she was already losing bone density and muscle mass, and then she had the stroke, which really debilitated her as far as being able to do physical exercise. And so to me, she would be, and I don't know, I think she said maybe her physical therapist was using BFR training at one point, but I don't think she's using it now. And I just didn't understand why. Or like my dad has had 2 knee replacements and a hip replacement. Like so many of you out there listening to this, if you're up in years, then you know, lifting heavy weights is something you're just not going to do. You don't want to, you haven't thought about in a while. Well, this can give you a way to not have to lift a whole lot of weights. And those of you who you've gone to your grandparents' house, you know, it is not unusual for grandparents to have a set of 10-pound dumbbells lying around somewhere just for whenever they're feeling a little spunky. You know, they're watching Fox News and Sean Hannity gets them all worked up and they got to release some of that tension. And so they'll whip out their 10-pound dumbbells and go to work for a while. Well, let me tell you something, Nana and Pawpaw. Why don't you take some BFR cuffs and get a little more work out of that and not do that much damage? If you are someone who's had a surgery, I remember one time I had a torn tendon in my bicep, you know, where my bicep connects to my elbow. And this is kind of weird. My orthopedic surgeon never mentioned BFR training to me, but to me, that would have been an incredible way to start to get back in shape. I get some of the resistance, the feeling, and I guess the benefits of heavy weight without actually having to lift the weights and risk doing damage that is supposed to be healing. So I just find that BFR training is an absolutely fantastic way to get the benefits of lifting heavy weights. And, you know, last week I talked about lifting and resistance training and how important it is. And so that's why I want to kind of do this follow-up on BFR training, because I've just started using mine a lot more. So here's a little bit of a how-to. So how do you use blood flow restriction cuffs and or bands? Well, it's pretty simple. On your upper body, you simply put them up above, as high on your arm as you possibly can. So like where your shoulder starts to round down to your arm, just as high up on your arm as possible. Again, use that Lane Norton prescribed, get a 7 out of 10 on the tightness, and that's it. And that's where you'll wear them. When it comes to your legs, you pull those up as high as you can, kind of at the very top of your quad, kind of the crease between your quad and your hip flexor, kind of right up there as high as you can get, and get it, same thing, 7 out of 10 tightness. That's where you're going to do the work, or where you're going to want to place them. Now, which ones do I use now? Well, I found some that I really like. I don't even know what brand they are. I will put it in the show notes and link to them on Amazon. There's some I found on Amazon, and they look just like blood pressure cuffs. If you put them on and you connect the little the pump to it, you connect it and you squeeze just like you were taking somebody's blood pressure. And there's a little knob you turn on the end so that the air doesn't come back out. So you get it as tight as you want. It actually has a gauge to tell you exactly how much pressure that you are filling the cuffs up. And they're really great. And I don't think they weren't cheap. I want to say they were over $100, maybe a couple hundred. I don't even know if they were that much. I tell you what, I'm going to look up real quick just to see if I can find them. And if this takes too long, then I can always edit it out later. But let's see, for you kids, let's see. Blood flow restriction cuffs. All right, here is a set for $349 that looks pretty similar to mine. Here's one for $449. I know I got some, mine were somewhere kind of in the middle, I thought. Training, therapy, occlusion. I don't know which brand mine are. I guess before I did this episode, I should have gone down to the garage and picked them up. Oh, here it is. Here's mine right here. Okay, $169. Here's mine. And let's see what brand this is. It is Rock Solid Results, full set. Brand Froon, F-R-O-O-N. So that's them. It was $169, and they've been great. They're easy to use. They give me all the pressure that I possibly need. And again, this is just something I think that for those of you who are recovering from injury, you should do this. For those of you who are getting up in years and you don't want to lift heavy weights, and you don't necessarily need to be lifting heavy weights, but you absolutely need to be doing some good resistance training and building your grip strength, I think this could be very good for you. Or if you're someone like me that works out solo all the time, if you're working out by yourself and you don't have someone spotting you, to keep it safe, I think adding some reps by using lower weight with the blood flow restriction bands, it might just be a little bit of a safer option for you. All in all, I just think that I'm a big believer. I'm very bullish on BFR. I may link to some of the research. I'd like to find some of Dr. Loenneke's research to include, just so you can kind of peruse that if you want to find out more about it. But the main thing is, this is one of those deals that it sounds like it's kind of like gitchy, like, okay, really? I mean, you're going to start cutting your blood flow off to lift weights, and that's going to somehow have some sort of a miraculous impact. It's not miraculous, but it is scientifically proven to work. You will build as much muscle as though you were lifting heavy weights without having to put a bunch of plates on the bars or buy big giant dumbbells or anything like that. So highly recommend it. And again, if you think that I'm coming at you 2 weeks in a row from Authentic Health Friday to today's show talking about muscle strength because it's because I'm just a little wound up on it because I think it's that important, then you're right. It is that important. You got to build muscular strength for bone density, for glucose management, for all sorts of markers that apply to aging well and being healthy and living longer, keeping your bones safe, protecting yourself from falls, and this is a good way to do it. So BFR, blood flow restriction training, you might want to try it out. I think you'll be glad you did. Look at the show notes. I'm going to give you links to these products and hopefully some more research, and I hope you found this helpful. That's the whole goal of the Jason Wright Show, as you know, is to help you as well as me improve always in all ways. I'm Jason, and I'm out.